was 5 years old, I watched a criminal point a 9mm pistol at my mother's head and fire it. It was August 6, 1981, and my mom was driving me and my little sister from our home in Springfield, Missouri, about 3 hours southwest of here, to visit her parents in southern Indiana. As we drove through St. Louis, crossed the Mississippi River, and into southern Illinois, we heard a pop and felt a tire go flat. And so Mom pulled our car to the side of the interstate, and another car that had been traveling beside us pulled in behind us. Mom assumed that a good Samaritan had seen our blowout and was pulling over to help us fix the flat. But two men got out of that car. One went to each side of our vehicle, and the man that went to the driver's side door tried to open it and found that it was locked. He told Mom to open the door and let him in, and when she refused, that's when he stuck that pistol in her face. You see, we hadn't had a blowout. Those men had shot out our tire, and they were there to rob us. Now, some might argue with what my mom did next, but she didn't have any good options. And it's a mother's instinct to put as much distance between her children and danger as possible. So, without much time to think, she threw that car back into gear and stomped on the gas pedal. The car lurched forward, and that's when the man with the gun fired. Now, the car hadn't moved very much, maybe just a matter of inches, but it was just enough that instead of the point of impact being the driver's window, it was the bullet hit that thin little sliver of metal on the outer edge of the driver's side door. And that was just enough to deflect the bullet downward so that instead of hitting her in the head, it hit Mom in her left arm as she was holding the steering wheel. It passed through her left biceps muscle, just missing the brachial artery there in her left arm, and passed over her pregnant belly. See, my mom was 6 months pregnant with my little brother at the time. Now, I remember that Mom screamed, but she didn't lose focus. And she continued to drive down the interstate as fast as 4 cylinders and 3 tires could take us. And she steered with her injured left arm and made a tourniquet with her right hand, driving as fast as she could go. We exited at the next exit off of the interstate, which is a tiny little corn town in southern Illinois of New Baden, Illinois, population 3,000. And what happened next is an exciting tale of literal cops and robbers, but we'll save that for another day. Suffice it to say, Mom survived, and 3 months later, my little brother was born. He's now a teacher in Springfield, Missouri, with 7 kids of his own, 4 biological and 3 adopted. Yeah. Now, I tell you this story to illustrate a point, and that is that most states have laws that protect unborn children against violence and negligence when they are wanted. If that criminal had succeeded in what he tried to do, which was kill my mother, he would have certainly also have killed my unborn brother. And in most states, including liberal Illinois, he would have been liable for the homicide of not just one person, but 2. But most states do not protect unborn children, at least not completely, if they are unwanted. But now hostile politicians and government agencies are threatening the ability to save even wanted unborn children from death by abortion. Let me explain what I mean. The Guttmacher Institute, which is a very pro-abortion organization that keeps statistics on the abortion industry, estimates that there were just more than 1 million abortions in the United States in 2023. Now, for a long time, most abortions were surgical procedures in which a doctor dismembered and removed the unborn child in a clinic. Now, while such gruesome procedures still happen far too often, in recent years, a majority of abortions have been accomplished with chemicals rather than with vacuums and forceps. And in the most common form of chemical abortion, a pregnant woman follows a 2-drug regimen. Usually the abortion provider has her take the first drug, mifepristone, at the clinic and then sends her home. Mifepristone is what we call an antagonist to the pregnancy hormone progesterone, which a pregnant mother's body naturally produces and which is necessary for the development of the tiny life growing inside her. Mifepristone blocks progesterone. and without which the child dies. A few days later, the woman is instructed to take the second drug, misoprostol, which causes contractions and, if it works as intended, disposes of the pregnancy tissue, as Planned Parenthood calls it. And because a chemical abortion is a multiple-day process, it has revealed a hard truth, which is that many women regret their decision to start a chemical abortion. Many women are pressured by their boyfriends or by their parents, or worse, even coerced or tricked into taking abortion drugs. Some feel they have no option because they don't have the resources or support they need to carry their pregnancy to term. Now, I will say more in a moment about the more than 3,000 pregnancy help organizations across the country that stand eager to come alongside these women and girls to provide the physical and emotional support and encouragement they need. But first, I want to tell you about a process that has helped literally thousands of such women who took that first abortion drug and immediately regretted it to reverse their chemical abortion and save their pregnancy and their baby. We know that doctors for years, for decades, have been safely administering supplemental progesterone approved by the FDA to prevent miscarriage and premature labor. That's been going on for decades. But now, in a process that's been nicknamed abortion pill reversal, or APR, if a pregnant woman who has taken that first abortion drug is quickly given supplemental progesterone, it can, in about 2/3 of the cases, overwhelm the effects of the mifepristone. The chemical abortion can be stopped, the unborn child can be saved, and a healthy pregnancy can safely continue with no harm to the child. The way this intervention happens most frequently is that a pregnant woman takes that first abortion pill at a Planned Parenthood or other abortion provider. And then we've heard many testimonies from women that by the time they got back to their car in the parking lot, they were immediately searching on their phones, searching the internet for help to undo what they just did. And many times their search often leads them to the Abortion Pill Reversal Network, whose 24/7 helpline can connect them to the nearest pregnancy resource center. And that pregnancy resource center, at no cost to the client, can connect her with the physician to prescribe the progesterone she needs to give her baby a chance. Now, since the abortion industry and pro-abortion politicians are always telling us they want to give women a choice, you would think that such people would applaud such a situation. But you would be wrong. To explain the hostility towards pregnancy help organizations and abortion pill reversal, I need to give you just a little review of recent history. In 2022, the U.S. Supreme Court handed down its decisions in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, which held that the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. Roe versus Wade was finally overruled, and the authority to regulate abortion was returned to the people and to their elected representatives. And in so doing, the Supreme Court reversed one of the most egregious examples of judicial overreach in American history. But when a draft of the Dobbs decision was leaked before publication, abortion activists took to the streets and pro-abortion politicians took to the airwaves to voice their displeasure and their commitment to unrestricted abortion. And while some protesters marched in the streets or outside Supreme Court justices' homes, some extremists began targeting pregnancy help organizations like this one in Ohio. They would break windows, sometimes they were firebombed, sometimes they would spray paint threatening messages such as, "If abortion isn't safe, then neither are you." Now, state attorneys general are the chief legal officers of their states. We're going to hear from some good ones in this conference. And they have powerful law enforcement authorities. But rather than combating this violent lawlessness, several of them, not the ones we're going to hear from here, but several of them began looking for ways to use their powers to stifle and intimidate pro-life pregnancy centers. And what Jane's Revenge was doing with spray paint and Molotov cocktails, these attorneys general were trying to do with investigations and lawsuits. Let me give you some examples. The smiling gentleman on the right having a good time at a Planned Parenthood event is the Honorable Rob Bonta, the Attorney General of California. If you know anything about California politics and seeing him here in this photo, you can probably guess how Mr. Bonta feels about abortion. But after Dobbs, rather than pledging to protect pregnancy resource centers as the targets of these violent attacks, Mr. Bonta drafted a letter in which he and 15 other state attorneys general promised to use their state's consumer protection laws to come after pregnancy resource centers. These consumer protection laws often empower state attorneys general to come after unfair or deceptive business practices. You might think of a used car lot that is rolling back odometers, or a securities dealer that's selling worthless investments. That's the kind of actual fraud and misrepresentation and deception that AGs are supposed to go after. But Mr. Bonta and the 15 other state attorneys general who signed this letter promised to use their powers to go after pregnancy help organizations, claiming that they deceive women by disguising themselves as reproductive health clinics, but hiding their true pro-life motives. Now bear in mind, they're talking about organizations with names like Life Choice Pregnancy Center in Wyoming, or the Bay Area Life Center in Wisconsin, or Birthline of San Diego County. I don't think anybody's confusing those for a Planned Parenthood clinic. And what do these deceptive organizations do? Well, they provide free pregnancy tests, free ultrasounds, free maternity and baby supplies, free baby clothes, free diapers, free car seats, parenting classes, fatherhood classes, counseling for these young mothers. But these state attorneys general are particularly hostile to pregnancy centers that offer abortion pill reversal, which they describe as an unproven and potentially risky medical protocol. Remember, we're just talking about progesterone. Now, there are some 3,000 of these pro-life centers across the country, many of which are low-budget, volunteer-run organizations. But they are very clear about their pro-life mission, and they offer their services, including abortion pill reversal, at no or very low cost to their clients. But Mr. Bonta and 15 other attorneys general signed this open letter in which they pledged to, and I quote, take numerous actions to mitigate the harmful effects of crisis pregnancy centers. And these were not empty threats. One of the signers of that open letter was Washington Attorney General Bob Ferguson. Here's Attorney General Ferguson speaking at a Planned Parenthood event. Ferguson is in his third term as the Attorney General of Washington, and during his long tenure, he has made the liberalization of laws and regulations relating to abortion a central focus of his policy advocacy and his political persona. He's been very transparent in his affinity for organizations such as Planned Parenthood that perform abortions and share his expansive view of abortion policy. For example, in 2015, nearly 36 Washington legislators asked Attorney General Ferguson to investigate Planned Parenthood after undercover video surfaced in which a Planned Parenthood executive was caught negotiating prices for the parts of fetuses that had been aborted. And in response, Attorney General Ferguson said he found no evidence to support those allegations and added his deep concern about these unfounded allegations against Planned Parenthood. Bob Ferguson has advocated for federal legislation to mandate abortion coverage by insurance companies, for taxpayer funding of abortion providers, to block abortion regulations in other states, not even in his own state of Washington, and to repeal federal limits on abortion like the Hyde Amendment. He called the Dobbs decision, the one that overturned Roe versus Wade, outrageous and awful, and vowed to look for ways to overturn it. And last year, he celebrated Abortion Provider Appreciation Day. Did you even know that was a thing? I didn't. Attorney General Bob Ferguson really likes abortion, and he really doesn't like pregnancy resource centers. In 2022, Bob Ferguson issued civil investigative demands to the Obria Group, which is a network of pro-life pregnancy centers and one of their affiliated centers in the state of Washington. These civil investigative demands said that they were to investigate deceptive practices with respect to the marketing of Obria's services to Washington consumers, including abortion pill reversal. AG Ferguson never cited a single consumer complaint, not any factual basis to justify his investigation. He just didn't like what Obria was doing. I'm not sure what happened to his concern for unfounded allegations, but they don't seem to apply when the target is a pregnancy resource center. But these civil investigative demands ordered the Obria Group to turn over, under penalty of sanction, mind you, their relationships with other pro-life organizations, their bank accounts, the identities of their directors, officers, employees, and volunteers. You mean the church youth group that came and cleaned up trash in our parking lot? Yeah, we want to know who those people are too. All of their tax records, all of the agendas and board meeting minutes from every board meeting that had happened from January 1st of 2010 to the present. They even wanted records about their employee compensation and retirement plans. What in the world does that have to do with alleged deceptive advertising? And they wanted all of this information all the way back to 2010, far beyond the applicable statute of limitations. And the CIDs, these civil investigative demands, repeatedly warned the Obria Group that if you don't comply, we're going to seek sanctions against you. So Obria did what many people would try to do. They tried to comply and turned over more than 1,500 pages of documentation, hoping that this would satisfy Attorney General Ferguson, and that he would see they're not violating the law. He would leave them alone to continue to quietly serve their clients in crisis. But instead, they found that the documents that they turned over were used to go after their vendors and other associations, causing some of them to disassociate any further relationship with the Obria Group. Their insurance carrier canceled their policy, and they faced the daunting prospect of having to hire counsel to defend themselves. So we've recently coined the term lawfare to refer to using the legal process to go after one's opponents. We've become very familiar with that in recent years. Anybody here think that's wrong? Anybody think that targeting people and entities that you don't like is an abuse of an attorney general's prosecutorial discretion? Well, at Alliance Defending Freedom, we do. So we sued Bob Ferguson. We think that this is a flagrant violation of our clients' First Amendment rights to freely exercise their faith, to freely speak their pro-life views, and to freely associate with like-minded people and organizations. We think that demanding information far beyond the scope of any authority and far beyond the statute of limitations is a violation of the Obria Group's Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. And we think that treating our clients differently than Planned Parenthood, just because Planned Parenthood provides abortions and our clients do not, is a violation of the 14th Amendment's prohibition against unequal treatment before the law. So we sued Bob Ferguson in federal court, and that case is still pending. But the fact that we brought him to account for his actions in court was enough to get him to stop the investigation and concede that he would take no further action against the Obria Group. This proud gentleman is New Jersey Attorney General Matthew Platkin. How much does Attorney General Platkin like abortion and dislike pro-lifers? Well, in response to the Dobbs decision, which he called, quote, a devastating setback for women's rights in America, end quote, Attorney General Platkin established a reproductive rights strike force in his office. I used to be the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Missouri, and we had strike forces, but they would go after things like violent crime or human trafficking. I've never heard of a strike force to make sure that you could get an abortion, especially in a deep blue state like New Jersey. But there it is. And not only this, but Attorney General Platkin established a grant program to fund abortion training and increase the number of abortion providers in New Jersey. The state's chief legal officer is using public funds to train abortionists. He also signed that letter that I told you about from the California Attorney General, promising to use his consumer protection powers to target pro-life pregnancy help organizations. Before he did, though, he published this consumer alert warning his constituents to stay away from crisis pregnancy centers, because you have to be careful. It says they offer things like free services and free pregnancy tests and free ultrasounds and adoption information and diapers. Truly scary stuff. But a group of pregnancy resource centers in New Jersey thought this smelled fishy, and they were right. And so they served a public records request on Attorney General Platkin and received a trove of emails showing that he had solicited Planned Parenthood, the biggest abortion provider in the world, to help him draft and revise this consumer alert denigrating pro-life pregnancy resource centers who offer their services for free and recommending that they instead go to Planned Parenthood, which makes hundreds of millions of dollars each year from abortions. But he wasn't done. A few weeks after Alliance Defending Freedom sued Bob Ferguson in Washington for harassing a pregnancy resource center there, AG Platkin slapped an investigation on a New Jersey pregnancy help organization called First Choice Women's Resource Center. And just like in Washington, the New Jersey Attorney General demanded that First Choice turn over all kinds of sensitive information about their employees, their associations, their donors. Talk about a thinly veiled threat. And Platkin said that he was concerned that First Choice was deceiving their clients and donors about their pro-life views, even though every page of First Choice's website says that they do not provide or refer for abortion. And just like in Washington, the New Jersey investigators could not identify a single complaint or other basis to investigate First Choice. They just didn't like what they were doing. But if this fishing expedition were allowed to continue, it would certainly be effective at interrupting First Choice's services, prevent them from serving their clients, it would waste their resources, and it would drive away their donors. So, as we did in Washington, we sued Attorney General Platkin in federal court to vindicate First Choice's rights under the Constitution. We again asserted those First, Fourth, and 14th Amendment protections. Now, this case in federal court in New Jersey is not as far along as the Washington case I just described, but we are prayerfully hopeful that the New Jersey court will see this fishing expedition for what it is and will protect First Choice from this baseless investigation. Let me give you one more example. This is New York Attorney General Letitia James standing with her friends from Planned Parenthood. Are you noticing a pattern here? Even before she was AG, Attorney General James campaigned on a promise to investigate pro-life organizations like pregnancy resource centers, which she calls fake clinics. Like her colleagues Bob Ferguson and Matthew Platkin, AG James also signed that letter pledging to come after pregnancy resource centers with her consumer protection powers. And in April of this year, Letitia James announced that she was using her consumer protection authority not just to investigate pregnancy resource centers, but to actually sue them on these specious theories. Now, our friends at the Thomas More Society rose to the defense of those pregnancy help organizations and is fighting to protect the constitutional rights there in New York. But to prevent Attorney General James' campaign of harassment against other pregnancy resource centers, we went on the offense. And so Alliance Defending Freedom is representing two centers and the National Institute of Family and Life Advocates, or some of you may know them as NIFLA, seeking an injunction to prevent Attorney General James from similarly targeting these organizations. And last month in federal court in the Western District of New York, we obtained a preliminary injunction on the grounds that our clients were likely to succeed on the merits of their constitutional claims. So there's a long way to go in that battle, but we have won this early skirmish. And at least for the time being, our clients in New York are free to speak with women who don't want to have a chemical abortion, to speak with them about the hope that exists for them and their babies through abortion pill reversal. So in conclusion, I'll just say that the legal contests like the ones that I described are brewing all across the country. I've only named 4 of the 16 liberal attorneys general who signed that letter pledging to come after pregnancy resource centers. My colleagues and I at Alliance Defending Freedom are happy warriors in this fight, but there aren't many of us. I'm just one of 9 attorneys on our life team at ADF. We're picking fights with some of the biggest attorney generals in the country. So we appreciate your prayers and yeah, we appreciate your support too. I encourage you to come alongside the pregnancy help organizations in your area. 2 Saturdays ago, my family, my wife and kids and I marched in the Walk for Life for the Pregnancy Care Center of Springfield, Missouri, which is where we live. And I'm sure there's one in your area that could use your support and would appreciate the encouragement as they face these threats. And they are literally saving lives. If you would like to follow our efforts to defend pregnancy resource centers and their freedom to speak their pro-life views and tell women about abortion pill reversal, I encourage you to visit our website at adflegal.org. It's adflegal.org. And if you can just use the search function there to search for the We Care campaign. There you can sign up to take a stand against this government harassment of people simply trying to bring hope to young people in a difficult situation. So thank you for letting me share just a little bit about what ADF is doing to protect our freedoms and keep the door open to speak the truth. We're grateful for the work that the Eagle Forum is doing to preserve our conservative values. And I know that if you are here at an Eagle Council, that you are a champion for those values in your sphere of influence. So thank you for what you do, and God bless you.